4:47 a.m. Cape Coral, Florida. July 3, 2026. A Lee County SWAT unit stacked along the east wall of a single-story stucco house off Chiquita Boulevard. 8 officers in full tactical gear. 1 federal K-9 handler. 3 FBI special agents embedded in the breach team. The house looked like every other house on the block. Beige walls. White shutters. A plastic lawn chair tipped on its side near the garage. The K-9, a Belgian Malinois named Crest, had alerted on the garage door 40 seconds earlier. Not a passive alert. A full sit and stare. The kind that stops a team in its tracks. The team went in at 4:49. What they found inside that house over the next 11 minutes would close 16 open missing persons cases across 4 Florida counties. It would also expose a recruitment and captivity network operating quietly for 162 days, hidden inside what county tax records still listed as a standard 2-bedroom rental. The narcotics warrant that launched this operation was never supposed to find any of it. But it did. Rewind to early February 2026. A routine traffic stop on Prado Boulevard, just south of Cape Coral Parkway. A Lee County deputy pulled over a 2019 Chevrolet Silverado for a defective taillight. The driver, Marcus Delroy Vance, 41, of no fixed address, produced a Florida license but became visibly agitated when asked to step out. The deputy called for backup. When a second unit arrived with a drug detection dog, the animal alerted on the truck bed. Under a false floor panel bolted beneath a rubber cargo mat, 2.3 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine, vacuum sealed in 4 separate packages, and 140 grams of a fentanyl methamphetamine pressed tablet, a combination product appearing with increasing frequency in Lee and Collier County seizures since late 2025. Vance was arrested. He said almost nothing. His phone, seized at booking, went to the Lee County Digital Forensics Unit. A warrant for cell data was signed within 72 hours. That phone is where the case began to deepen. FBI Special Agent Dana Alcott, assigned to the Southwest Florida Violent Crime and Exploitation Task Force out of the Fort Myers Field Office, received the referral 14 days after Vance's arrest. Her unit typically handled cases beyond local narcotics jurisdiction. The referral came with a summary: suspected mid-level distributor, possible stash location, cell data under review. Alcott's job was to decide whether the federal threshold was met. On paper, it wasn't obvious. She pulled Vance's phone data anyway. What she found in the first 48 hours looked like a standard distribution network. Burner-to-burner calls. Encrypted messaging apps she'd seen before. One primary contact number that Vance had called or texted on 63 separate occasions over 90 days. That number had never appeared in any prior state or federal investigation database. A clean number in a world of recycled ones. In Alcott's experience, that itself was a signal. She requested a subscriber lookup. The number was registered to a prepaid SIM purchased at a convenience store in Bonita Springs in October 2025. Cash purchase. No surveillance footage. The phone was still active. Cell tower data showed it spent most of its time pinging a cluster of towers in northwestern Cape Coral, a residential neighborhood about 2 miles from Vance's listed address. Alcott flagged it. She didn't yet know the address those towers pointed to was a rental property at the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac off Chiquita Boulevard. She would know in 6 weeks. I went through the early surveillance logs on this case, and one detail kept bothering me. The cell tower pattern was narrow. Too narrow for a distribution operation. Distribution means movement, drivers, handoffs, multiple drop points. But this number barely moved. For 90 days, it sat within a 2-mile radius almost continuously. That's not a dealer's pattern. That's a fixed location. Alcott saw the same thing. She made a note and kept going. The surveillance on the Chiquita Boulevard property began in early March 2026. A rotating schedule of task force vehicles, unmarked, switched every 48 hours. A fixed camera on a utility pole, warrant authorized, covering the front and driveway. A second unit covering the rear alley. Over the first 3 weeks, the property's outward behavior was unremarkable. Deliveries arrived, retail packages, groceries twice a week, propane tanks twice in 1 month. Vehicles came and went. The primary resident, identified through utility billing as Leonard Cole, 44, appeared at the front door rarely. 2 vehicles were registered to an LLC at that address. Gulf Shores Hospitality Partners, Incorporated in Florida, in September 2025. Stated business, staffing and event coordination for the hospitality industry. Registered agent was a postal services mailbox in North Fort Myers. Alcott ran the LLC through every available federal and state database. No prior enforcement contact. No tax liens. No litigation history. A clean company, incorporated weeks before the cell phone she was tracking had been purchased. She cross-referenced the LLC name against Craigslist archives. This wasn't standard procedure, but a task force digital analyst ran the search. 3 days later, the analyst returned a pattern of job listings between September 2025 and January 2026. They advertised hospitality positions, hostess work at a Fort Myers restaurant with housing included, a catering shift for a yacht charter company in Naples, a live-in housekeeper position for a seasonal rental property. The listings used different email addresses, contact numbers, rotated, but the wording, how housing, pay, and on-site accommodation were described, was nearly identical across all of them. Alcott sent the listing data to the FBI's Victim Services Division in Tampa. She asked one question: did any open missing persons reports in the Gulf Coast region involve women who had responded to a Craigslist employment ad? The answer came back in 40 hours. 6 of them did. Young women, ages 22 to 27. Reported missing from towns between Tampa and Naples. 6 separate cases, 4 separate county sheriff's offices, no prior connection established. Each woman had told family or a friend she was taking a temporary job, hospitality, event staffing, catering. Each had stopped responding to messages within days. None had been found. The case changed category that afternoon. It was no longer a narcotics referral. Alcott brought in her supervisor, Supervisory Special Agent Roland Marsh. Within 24 hours, the task force was reorganized. 2 additional FBI agents were added to surveillance. A victim identification specialist came in from Tampa. A federal prosecutor was read into the case under confidentiality protocol. The narcotics angle was kept, deliberately. The drug warrant would be the entry mechanism. The captivity case would be managed separately, disclosed only to the core team. 3 agents knew what the drywall might be hiding. What stands out about this case is not the scale, but the discipline of the concealment. The people running this network understood federal investigation patterns well enough to insulate every layer. The LLC, the rotating listings, the clean phones, the ordinary-looking house. This was engineered. Over the following 5 weeks, the picture expanded. Additional Craigslist archives yielded 10 more listings tied to the same patterns. Additional missing persons cross-references, spanning Hillsborough, Sarasota, Charlotte, and Lee counties, flagged 10 more women whose disappearances fit the profile. All adults, all between 22 and 27. All last known to be pursuing temporary employment. All gone silent within days. 16 missing women. 16 open cases. The same address. What the surveillance team couldn't confirm yet, because they couldn't enter the property, was whether any of these women were still inside. 162 days had passed since the earliest reported disappearance. Alicia Ferron, 24, from Bradenton, last heard from in late October 2025, when she texted her mother that she'd arrived at the job site and it was nicer than expected. Her mother, Sandra Ferron, had driven to the Fort Myers address listed in the Craigslist ad 3 days later. The address turned out to be a strip mall. She filed a missing persons report the same afternoon. Sandra Ferron had called the Lee County Sheriff's Office 11 times in the months since. She was told each time the case was active. She didn't know that in late April, an FBI agent in Fort Myers had crossed her daughter's name off a growing list and circled the same address she'd already visited. She didn't know they were close. 48 hours before the breach, one complication nearly forced a delay. The cell tower data on Cole's primary phone went dark. No calls. No messages. No pings. For 31 hours, the number was silent, the longest gap in 90 days of tracked activity. The surveillance team ran analysis. 2 scenarios. The phone had been destroyed, meaning Cole suspected surveillance, or it was simply off, intentionally or by battery failure. Alcott made the call to hold. Pulling back and restarting would cost weeks. The narcotics warrant was signed, the tactical plan was rehearsed, victim services was staged. They would execute on schedule. If Cole had been tipped, they would find an empty house. That was the risk. The phone came back online at 11:14 p.m. on July 2nd. Cell tower data placed it inside the Chiquita Boulevard property. The operation was confirmed for 4:45 a.m. on July 3rd. Here's what stayed with me about the sequence. 3 months of careful federal work, a victim identification case running parallel to narcotics investigation, an entire support structure staged outside Cape Coral, and the entire operation nearly rested on the battery life of a $40 prepaid phone. The system held, but barely. The tactical brief at 3:15 a.m. on July 3rd was attended by 11 people, 8 SWAT officers from the Lee County Sheriff's Special Operations Unit, the K-9 handler, and 3 FBI agents including Alcott. The briefing was held in a parking structure 6 blocks from the target. The narcotics warrant authorized entry to search for controlled substances, drug paraphernalia, and evidence of distribution. The tactical team was told there was potential for a higher complexity scene inside. They were told to clear every room, including any structural anomaly, any wall, partition, or enclosure that didn't match the county building records. Those records listed the house as a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, single-family structure of 940 square feet. A standard floor plan submitted at permit in 2004, updated only once for a roof repair in 2018. The floor plan showed no rear addition, no secondary structure, no partition walls beyond the standard bedroom and bathroom configuration. The breach commander, Lieutenant Eric Salas, noted this and marked it for awareness. If the team found square footage that didn't match, they were to treat it as a potential confinement area and call for the FBI incident coordinator. He didn't tell his team why. He marked it and moved on. At 4:49 a.m., the team made entry. The front door was taken with a hydraulic ram. 1.4 seconds from contact to open. The team moved fast and low through the living room, which smelled immediately of chemical solvent, a smell the team leader later described as consistent with methamphetamine processing residue. The kitchen island held 3-gallon-sized plastic bags of a crystalline substance, a digital scale, and a vacuum sealing machine. The living room was otherwise sparse. A folding table, 2 chairs, a television mounted crookedly on the wall. Leonard Cole was located in the master bedroom, asleep. He was taken into custody without resistance at 4:51 a.m. A second individual, Darren Morse, 29, was found in the bathroom adjacent to the laundry room, where a fentanyl press occupied most of the floor space. Morse offered no resistance. 2 in custody. 2 rooms cleared. The K-9, Crest, had been brought inside to assist with locating additional narcotics. He moved through the kitchen, confirmed the alert on the island packages, then turned toward the far end of a short hallway at the rear of the house. The hallway terminated in what appeared, on the county floor plan, to be the exterior wall of the structure. There was no room shown beyond it, no closet, no secondary space. Crest sat down at the base of the wall and stared. Not at drugs. Dogs trained in dual-purpose narcotics and human tracking don't signal the same way for both. This was the second alert, the human track alert. Head low, ears flat, completely still. Lieutenant Salas radioed Alcott at the perimeter command position. He used the prearranged phrase from the briefing, structural anomaly, rear of structure, requesting FBI coordinator. Alcott was inside the house in under 90 seconds. The wall at the end of the hallway was drywall, standard 5/8-inch wallboard, painted over, baseboards installed, a light switch mounted to the left that controlled a ceiling fixture. But 2 things were wrong. First, the wall sat 18 inches inside what would have been the exterior line, if the county dimensions were accurate. Second, the light switch, when activated, didn't turn on the ceiling fixture. It turned on nothing visible from the hallway. Salas had his team run a stud finder across the surface. No standard framing pattern. The studs were spaced at irregular intervals, narrower near the top, wider at the base, which isn't how a structural or exterior wall is built. The wall was a false front. Something behind it needed the irregular spacing. They cut it. Using a reciprocating saw, a SWAT officer opened a 14-inch inspection cut in the lower drywall at 4:59 a.m. The cut took 40 seconds. Through the opening, the team heard sound, movement, more than one person. And then, from somewhere behind the wall, a voice. Not words, just sound, a human voice. Alcott later described it. Upon breach of the partition, the team encountered a sealed interior structure extending approximately 31 linear feet along the rear of the property. The structure had been built inside the existing envelope using the original exterior wall as its rear face, with the false drywall as its front. The space, approximately 8 feet wide and 31 feet long, had been subdivided into 3 sections. All sections were locked from the hallway side. All sections contained individuals requiring immediate medical evaluation. 16 women, ages 22 to 27, all adults, all reported missing. Across the previous 162 days, from towns between Tampa and Naples, they had disappeared one by one. Now they were in the same place. Emergency medical services had been staged 3 blocks away as part of standard tactical protocol. The call went out at 5:02 a.m. 3 ambulance units and a Lee County EMS supervisor responded within 4 minutes. A 4th unit was dispatched from Cape Coral Medical Center at 5:11 a.m. All 16 individuals were transported for evaluation. Medical personnel documented physical indicators consistent with prolonged confinement, dehydration, insufficient nutrition, limited mobility over an extended period. A triage physician later described the collective medical picture to a federal victim services coordinator as one of the most significant presentations from a domestic recovery operation. FBI victim services personnel, staged at a secondary location and called in at 5:06 a.m., took over coordination of victim support, identification, and family notification. The family notification calls began at 6:22 a.m., Sandra Ferran received a call at 6:38 a.m. from a victim services agent in the Tampa field office. The call lasted 4 minutes. She said almost nothing. Alicia Ferran had been missing for 162 days. Did the system serve these families, or did it take too long to connect what was in front of it? 16 missing persons reports across 4 counties, 6 of which had Craigslist employment connections in common. Those connections took months to surface. That question doesn't have a clean answer. The search of the Chiquita Boulevard property continued for 9 hours. Narcotics recovered included 2.3 kilograms of methamphetamine, consistent with what was found in Vance's truck in February, plus an additional 6.8 kilograms of processed methamphetamine located inside a hidden floor cavity beneath the laundry room. The fentanyl press, the 3 bag samples from the kitchen, and packaging materials consistent with retail distribution were submitted to the FBI laboratory in Quantico. Financial evidence recovered included $46,000 in U.S. currency in the master bedroom, a second burner phone belonging to Cole, and a notebook containing what federal prosecutors later characterized as a partial transaction ledger. The notebook wasn't written in code. It was written in plain English, with initials, dates, and dollar amounts. That level of operational carelessness, in a network that had otherwise exercised significant tradecraft, was striking. Alcott flagged it. "The notebook is inconsistent with the rest of the operation," she wrote. "Every other element was designed to minimize exposure. The notebook was not." Her working theory: the notebook was maintained by someone else and left at the property without Cole's knowledge. The handwriting didn't match any sample from Cole or Morse. A third person had been involved in the operation at the Chiquita Boulevard address, and that person wasn't in the house when the breach team arrived. At 5:17 a.m. on July 3rd, while the scene was still active, the task force ran the partial ledger entries against the cell data recovered from Cole's phone. 3 contact numbers appeared in both the notebook and the call log. 2 were confirmed as belonging to Vance, the man arrested in February, and a known associate already in county custody. The third number was new. It had called Cole's phone on 14 separate occasions between November 2025 and June 2026. The last call was June 29th, 3 days before the breach. Tower data placed that call's origin point not in Cape Coral, not in Lee County. The call had originated in Manatee County, in the area of Bradenton, the same city where Sandra Ferran lived, the same city from which Alicia Ferran had disappeared in October 2025. Alcott marked the third number as Priority 1. A warrant application for subscriber data was filed by 8 a.m. on July 3rd. By that evening, federal investigators had a name. Not Cole, not Morse, not Vance. A different name, attached to a prepaid SIM purchased at a Bradenton retail outlet in late September 2025. The same month Gulf Shores Hospitality Partners was incorporated. The name led to a Bradenton address. A surveillance unit was deployed the following morning, July 4th. 26 hours after the Chiquita Boulevard breach. The apartment was empty. Recently vacated. Food in the refrigerator. A closet with hangers but no clothes. Bathroom counter cleared of personal items. The kind of departure that happens fast, when someone is watching the news and sees a raid they recognize. As of this recording, the individual associated with that third phone number has not been taken into custody. Federal arrest warrants have been issued. The case remains active. The network, as investigators described it in court filings, had at least one operational arm above Cole and Morse, a recruiter layer responsible for identifying and targeting potential victims through Craigslist, then funneling them toward the Chiquita Boulevard property. That recruiter layer has not been fully mapped. Let's be direct. The fact that it took 162 days and a narcotics warrant to find 16 women reported missing across 4 neighboring counties is a failure of cross-jurisdictional data sharing, and it deserves examination independent of the outcome. The outcome, the recovery, was the result of good work by the task force. But the conditions that allowed the network to operate for over 5 months without triggering a coordinated federal response aren't explained away by the fact that the recovery eventually happened. 16 missing persons files. 1 FBI cross-reference query. 40 hours for the pattern to surface. The files existed. The connection was there. It was a question of who asked. Vance appeared in federal court in Fort Myers on July 7th. He faces charges of possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine, conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute fentanyl, and federal conspiracy charges connected to the captivity case. His federal public defender entered a not guilty plea. Cole and Morse appeared in the same courtroom the following morning. Cole faces the full range of charges tied to both the narcotics operation and the captivity case. Morse faces the narcotics charges and is expected to face additional federal charges pending further indictment. Both entered not guilty pleas. Gulf Shores Hospitality Partners was flagged for administrative dissolution by the Florida Department of State on July 5th. The LLC's bank records, subpoenaed the same day as the breach, showed deposits of approximately $214,000 between October 2025 and June 2026. The source is under investigation. Of the 16 women recovered, all have been connected with family members or support contacts. Federal Victim Services is coordinating ongoing care and legal assistance. Their identities are not being disclosed publicly. 11 of the 16 missing persons cases had been filed across 2 specific counties, Lee and Charlotte, without a formal joint task force designation prior to Alcott's query in early April. The case has prompted a review of multi-county missing persons protocols in the Southwest Florida region by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. There is a line in the federal criminal complaint unsealed on July 5th that reads almost like fiction. It describes the moment Cole was taken into custody. He was found asleep, with the television on, tuned to a local news broadcast. The deputy who placed him in handcuffs noted the broadcast was covering an unrelated 4th of July event preview. Cole said nothing. He looked at the television for a moment before being walked out. He had been 11 minutes from the K9 alert, when the news was still something happening to someone else. One detail from the property search warrants attention. Among the items from Cole's second burner phone was a series of photographs taken inside the rear structure that investigators believe were sent to the unidentified recruiter in Bradenton as operational documentation. The photographs don't depict victims. They depict construction work, drywall installation, framing, electrical routing. They appear to have been taken in August and September 2025, weeks before the first missing persons report was filed. The concealed rear wing was constructed before any victims were recruited. The structure was built first. The listings came after. That sequence is what elevated this case, in the language of federal prosecutors, beyond opportunistic conduct. It triggered the application of federal statutes that carry mandatory minimum sentencing. Will this happen again? The question isn't rhetorical. Comment yes or no. The infrastructure for this operation, a staffing front, rotating listings, a concealed structure in a residential property, doesn't require sophisticated resources. It requires patience, a specific type of predation, and a gap in the visibility of disparate local missing persons databases. All 3 conditions still exist in the Southwest Florida region and in dozens of similar regions across the country. The missing persons review prompted by this case is procedural. Procedural responses take time. The gap that was exploited for 162 days doesn't close the day a review is announced. By daybreak on July 3rd, the scene at Chiquita Boulevard had expanded to include a Federal Bureau of Investigation Evidence Response Team, 4 victim services personnel, a federal prosecutor, a Florida Department of Law Enforcement liaison, 2 Lee County Sheriff supervisors, and a public information officer fielding calls about the overnight operation. The house, photographed in early morning light, looked like every other house on the block. Beige stucco, white shutters. The plastic lawn chair, still tipped on its side near the garage, was visible in the background of the first media pool photograph. The chair had been there, presumably, for some portion of the 162 days. 16 women walked out of that house, or were carried out, before 6 a.m. on July 3rd. The sun wasn't yet fully up over Lee County. By the time it was, the first family notification calls had already been made, and the man who had orchestrated the network's recruitment layer, whose phone had called Cole 14 times over 8 months, was already gone from Bradenton. His trail, as of this recording, ends at an empty apartment and a discarded SIM card. The federal warrant is active. The case file is open. The narcotics warrant that initiated this investigation was issued to locate 2.3 kilograms of methamphetamine and 1 individual suspected of distribution. The warrant was satisfied in its first 4 minutes. Everything that followed was not in the warrant. 16 names are no longer listed as missing. 16 files, across 4 counties, have been updated. The network has been partially dismantled. Partially, the person who built it, who incorporated the company, who wrote the listings, who photographed the construction in August 2025 and documented it on a phone that has since gone dark, has not been found. The demand that created the network still exists. The infrastructure has been seized. The methodology has been documented in a federal criminal complaint that is now public record. The complaint runs 41 pages. It describes, in institutional language, what happened inside a 940-square-foot house off Chiquita Boulevard over 162 days. What it cannot describe, because federal complaints don't work that way, is what it sounded like when the drywall came down at 4:59 a.m. and the first officer pushed a flashlight through the opening. One victim services agent on scene that morning, in a written note attached to the debrief, recorded a single sentence about the moment the first partition section was removed. She wrote, "The sound from inside the structure, when the opening was made, was consistent with individuals who had not heard that sound, a wall coming down, in a very long time." The case continues. The warrant remains active. One person is still unaccounted for in a network that prosecutors described in preliminary filings as one of the largest domestic captivity recoveries in the Southwest Florida region in recent years. The house is sealed. The LLC is dissolved. The K-9 named Crest has been returned to regular rotation. 16 cases closed. 1.